Hey everybody, I'm your host, John Myers, live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey everybody, gotta have my notes. It's John Myers from the KICKER UnMasked studios. Gotta have my notes. Alternator. Hey everybody. We have fun. Hey everybody. Hit like and subscribe. Right here, right now. It's John Myers. We like to give stuff away. Alternator. Post some more pictures. We got to thank Steve and Becky live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. Don't forget Texas Roadhouse right here, right now. Hey everybody. Don't forget right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey everybody. Had a great dinner tonight. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. Had a great dinner tonight. Hey everybody. So, housekeeping. Had a great dinner tonight. So, alternator. Housekeeping. Housekeeping. 7:30 on Tuesday night. Housekeeping. From the KICKER UnMasked studios. Housekeeping. Right here, right now. Hey everybody. So, it's John Myers. Hey everybody. It's John Myers from the KICKER UnMasked studios. Hey everybody. From the KICKER UnMasked studios. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey everybody. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey everybody. Right here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday, April 11th. I'm Aaron Malin, Kicker Tech Force. I'm your host tonight. And of course, we've got a fantastic show about Teal Small parameters. Everything you wanted to know and way more. In the house tonight, we've got, of course, JW, we've got Ernie, and we've got a new guy, Mr. Stephen Bambrow. Can you come on out here for one moment, please? We want to show you the newest guy in the UnMasked team. Stephen Bambrow's been with the KICKER for quite a few years, but he has now been promoted to UnMasked staff member. Stephen, good to see you. Talking to this mic right here.
How's it going?
I'm just kidding, they can hear you. It's good to meet you, man. Go do some work. Thanks for being here, Stephen. I've worked with Stephen on several trade shows, and the guy's fantastic. He always shows up on time, he's always smiling, and he's always got a great attitude. What more could you ask for? Oh, and he smells really good, too. All right, so we've also got, of course, our special guest, Aaron Surratt. You have all met Aaron Surratt in the past on a different show. We're bringing him back to talk about Teal Small parameters. So stay tuned, we'll be right back.
It's been a long road since the original KICKER christened that first pickup truck. It kicked off a car audio renaissance, and upgrading your music in a vehicle was a requirement. America's music machines became living loud over your passion, your emotion, your existence. Outdoors or on the open road, your sound is KICKER.
Welcome back. Guess who? Mr. Aaron Surratt, or as Ernie calls you, Surratt.
Yeah, I always tell people you can call me a rat as long as you put the sir in front of it.
That makes perfect sense. So, Aaron, you have been on the show before. It's been a couple of years, though, right?
Yeah, it's been a little while.
And the last show that you did, what were you guys talking about? Do you remember?
I believe it was just sharing some of our prototyping process. Talked about vacuum forming surrounds and things of that nature.
Okay. So now we're going to get a little bit deeper with the science. And this is fantastic. As you're probably aware, Aaron is part of the Golden Ear team with Steve Irby. And so if Aaron hasn't heard it, we can't yet sell it. Is that about true?
Well, Irby has the final say.
Sure.
But, we definitely lean on each other to hopefully come to a good conclusion and give you guys a product that sounds really good.
Now, if you say, Steve, this sucks, he's going to trust you, and it's not done yet.
Yes, I mean, sometimes, I'm usually not that harsh with the criticism, but, we don't always agree on everything, and that's why it's good to collaborate.
Yes. Actually, at dinner, Aaron was talking about he's not a yes man, and that is fantastic because you can't just keep telling the boss yes, or you get really mediocre product.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our own opinions, and it's okay if it's different than your superiors.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So we are going to talk about some Teal Small parameters, some deep dive stuff. We want your questions. We've got our expert here, so please put your questions in the feed. Ernie will pop them up so we can take a look at them and answer them live on air. So ask all the questions you've got. We definitely want to make sure this is interactive. When we were talking about this before doing the show tonight, I was concerned that some of these things we're going to talk about are really, really deep and quite frankly hard to understand, but you've got a great way of explaining them in layman's terms. So I'm excited about that.
Well, cool. Yeah, I hope we can make everything really understandable.
So before we get into the exact Teal Small parameters, let's talk briefly about some of the products that you've been involved with. Quad box sitting right here behind me. This one, I forgot about this. You mentioned this tonight. Quad box, talk about that.
The idea came up to be able to give customers something they can throw in their vehicle and have big bass right out of the gate for the DIY guys. So, we got on the box modeling software, we plugged the woofers in and came up with something that we thought would be good, that fits between the wheel wells of most SUVs, and that you can, get a 150 out of the gate with.
That's just silly. It's silly. Derek Williston, hopefully you're watching tonight, Derek. I think he was the first guy to put it on video that it did a 150 point something right out of the box.
Yeah.
And he was tickled pink with that. So thank you, Derek.
And a lot of guys are hitting that 150.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
We've got one in our Fiat. We've talked about this a few times. And in our Fiat, it's actually turned the wrong direction for true SPL because we needed the backside to put all the amps and stuff on. But it's still, it flexes the doors and the window. And
I mean, it is in a Fiat.
With a 2501.
Yeah, it gets down pretty good.
What are some other projects that you're proud of?
Well, everybody knows me for the QB8.
Yes.
The KSSMT4, did I say that right?
The mid-tweet pod, yep.
The pods.
Yep.
And various others, most of our subwoofer enclosures. And in fact, that's how I use a lot of our Teal Small parameters for my job. Is preliminary enclosure design. Or sometimes I'll use them if I want to do a bookshelf speaker. I typically like those to make big bass, even though they have a little 5-inch or 6-inch speaker in them.
Sure.
So I'll look at parameters like FS to get an idea of how low it might play. VAS to make sure it doesn't need a huge box. I'll look at XMAX to make sure it has some displacement and can actually move and play some bass for a small speaker. And then also BL, because I like to put passive radiators on small cabinets. Again, it's another good way of getting good bass, and you've got to have the motor to be able to swing all of that in a small chamber. You've got to be able to swing the passive and the driver itself. So those are 4 of the main parameters that I look at when I'm trying to do a bigger bass, like 2-way bookshelf system.
Now, quick disclaimer, just in case Mr. Irby's watching, we are not working on bookshelf speakers for Kicker. Aaron's talking about personal projects.
Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of personal projects, and I play around, and I'm an audio geek, just like hopefully a lot of you guys watching are, and so I tinker with things in my free time.
Yeah, and it's fun actually because we'll go into the listening lab periodically doing tours or just walking around the building, and Aaron will be working on something like a bookshelf speaker. He'll be like, "Dude, what is that? That's so cool!" And it'll be all mocked up, and it's just amazing what you're playing with back there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I get to use my hands. I get to build stuff in the shop, and that's what I really like to do. My job's real dynamic. I'm never doing the same thing all the time, and that's good for my personality.
Yes. So let's talk some Teal Small parameters in the specifics. Fortunately, Aaron printed out a page and a half of some of these things we're going to talk about so I can keep track of them. Let's start with top of your list.
Well, we've got RE, or sometimes it's listed as REVC or DCR, and this is simply just the resistance of the voice coil. You take a voltmeter, you hook it up to the voice coil, and that's your DCR. A lot of people will ask, why is the DCR in ohms, lower than the rated impedance of the speaker? Well, that's because nominal impedance and DCR are not the same. DCR is strictly just the resistance of the voice coil. Impedance takes inductance and capacitance into consideration as well. So that's why you don't see, for a 4 ohm sub, you don't read 4 ohms on your voltmeter.
Yeah.
You're reading 3.3 to 3.6 or 3.8 or somewhere along those lines.
This is a good point. Oftentimes people are confused. So if I have a 100-watt amplifier and I'm running a speaker that's 4 ohms, why does the power keep changing? Why is it fluctuating?
Well, because you have an impedance curve. And the impedance curve is what dictates what your power output is at a certain frequency. When we put a speaker in a sealed enclosure, you have a big peak is your driver resonance, and that's where the impedance is the highest, and that's where your speaker moves the easiest in the application. But beyond, so you don't have really much voltage going to the speaker. The impedance is so high, but it tapers down from there. As you go up in frequency and down in frequency, your impedance lowers, and you get more power.
And this is partially why I'm assuming that high-pass filters and low-pass filters are so helpful for a speaker's output.
Definitely. You're limiting the bandwidth in which they play, so,
Yeah. And, okay, good. So FS, what's this?
FS, that's the driver's resonant frequency in free air. So that's the point. I said it in the application, it's where the speaker moves the easiest, but in free air, which is where we measure all of our TSPs, we've got our Clipple clamp back there that we clamp our woofers in, it's where the speaker moves its easiest. If you want something that plays really low, you probably want to find something with a lower FS. That's a pretty good rule of thumb to give you an indication of how low the speaker plays. That's not always the case though, because we derive these measurements with small signal, so not very much voltage. And a lot of times you can get into a stiffer portion of your suspension at larger signal. So sometimes we listen to woofers where the FS is lower, but it doesn't play quite as low. And it's because that's what's happening.
Okay.
It gets into a stiffer portion of the suspension, and the FS actually increases a little bit when you move it a little bit more.
You're making me think of, we buy a lot of our competitive brand products to sample. There's a lot of good companies out there, and sometimes we'll buy a sample from something and we'll run it through the Teal Smalls, and we'll be like, what? This doesn't make any sense. So I guess what I'm getting at is there's a really fine art in balancing all these things we're talking about to get exactly what you're trying to get in a driver.
Definitely. I mean, it's all a balance. You change one thing, everything else changes. Or you change one thing mechanically anyway, everything mechanically changes. You change one thing electrically, everything in the electrical parameters changes. So yeah, I mean, every one little thing affects the other, and it's definitely a balancing act.
I remember when we were listening to some early samples of the Street series, and we were doing some competitive analysis, and I was sitting there thinking, man, this doesn't sound the way I expected it to. And it was a good experience because there was other guys in the room that were not hearing the same thing I was hearing. And so
it's all subjective.
Yes, very much subjective. And so we actually, I think Alan was working on this project, right, with you, Alan?
I didn't work on this very much.
Did?
I mean, I helped, of course, with the listening, but this was all Alan, yeah.
Okay. So I remember that they ended up changing something, and it completely opened up the sound of the Street series, and it was just so much better. And I wish I could remember what they were changing.
I bet it was crossover.
Maybe.
Because you can do a whole lot with crossover.
Yeah.
And of course, when we listened to these, we were listening to them with the bullet tweeters and pairing them together.
Yeah.
I bet you it was crossover manipulation.
That's probably it. Yeah. It was a dramatic difference, though. Like, wow, okay, that's the winner.
Yeah.
Next up, MMS.
MMS, that is the mechanical mass of the driver's diaphragm assembly and the voice coil with the air load. So again, you're moving the speaker, so there's a little bit of it when you're taking this measurement, so there's a little bit of an air load on the cone, on the spider, and so that adds a little extra mass. I'm going to go ahead and jump on down to MMD, because that is the same exact thing, but without the air load. So it's just the mass of the moving parts of the speaker and the voice coil.
So there's a lot of discussion about pressed paper, non-pressed paper, polypropylene. What's all this about?
Well, you know, different materials have different ratings of stiffness. Obviously, you can make them thicker or stiffer by making them thicker.
Sure.
You know, so you just use what's best for the amount of stiffness that you need and whatever efficiency level you want to hit. Some stuff you make it so thick to get it to the stiffness that you want, but it's too heavy, and that kills your efficiency. So that's why we, you know, select different materials to try to get the rigidity that we need, but still keep it lightweight and efficient.
So the Solo X, the new Solo X, is a pressed paper pulp,
It is a
right?
pressed pulp, yes.
Okay.
And that's exactly why we use it. It gives us stiffness, lots of stiffness, without being too heavy.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
can maintain efficiency.
And the front of that driver is smooth, but the backside is rough.
Yeah, it's kind of rough. You know, so many drivers are done that way.
Yeah,
You know, pressed
yeah.
pulp. They don't really need to be finished on the backside.
Right.
So you know, that's why that's the case.
We used to joke about, so when I worked at Polk Audio, we had a lot of home subwoofers, and if you look at a car audio subwoofer, they're usually beautiful. You look at the backside of a home audio subwoofer, and it's boring. There's nothing there. It's just a magnet and a stamped steel frame on a $2,000 subwoofer.
Yeah. Well, that's because they're just in a box. And, you know,
Yes.
it's not like car audio where people want to show it off to their friends and
Yes.
want it to look cool. You
That's
know?
right.
So
That's right.
it's more of just serves a purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
We put a lot of money into the beauty of these designs, by the way, guys. So, okay, so next up is CMS.
CMS, that's the compliance, or basically how easy is it to move the speaker? How well does the speaker comply with the signal that it's receiving? And then you have the direct inverse of that, which is KMS. A lot of you guys aren't typically going to see KMS in your box modeling software. This is something that speaker designers use more, but it gives them a sense, it's usually represented in a curve, but it gives them a sense of how the stiffness of the spider and surround is working.
Okay.
And it usually matches a BL curve.
Okay.
Because a BL curve is basically like a smiley face. You have your center, and then you have kind of a smiley face with this big flat area. That's where your motor strength is the strongest. But as you move the speaker, you know, the motor strength is going to get a little weaker.
Sure.
And so as it curves up, at these points here is where your motor strength is weaker. Well, on a suspension curve or your KMS curve, it's kind of going to be the same, because as you're moving that suspension up, it's getting tighter.
Right.
And so you have that same kind of smiley face representing your KMS curve.
Okay.
But that's something that typically engineers look at. CMS is what you guys are going to be more familiar with in your box modeling software, and that is the compliance of the driver.
So we've got some questions lined up. Before we get to the questions, one question of my own is, there's often a conversation between power handling and sensitivity or efficiency. Talk a little bit about how we balance that.
Well, since the application has a lot to do with actual mechanical power handling, you know, that's kind of a tough one to try to balance.
Sure.
Since the application dictates so much.
So like in a Solo Barrack small box woofer, so you've got to have a really small enclosure, you need a lot of motor strength to overcome that.
Correct.
So the sensitivity...
Need a lot of mass so that it'll play low in that small chamber.
Yes, a lot of mass.
So you need the motor for that mass too.
Yes, yes.
Have a tight air spring and a lot of mass.
So your sensitivity then will be lower, but your power handle will be higher.
Yeah, because
right?
you've got a bigger motor. And
Okay.
you're typically using a bigger coil in that situation because you need to handle the additional power that's required for the amount of moving mass and the tight air spring in the small sealed chamber.
Now, there used to be a line of Kicker speakers called XPL. It was before my time.
Yeah.
What was the XPL? What was the magic of that?
Well, so we had two different versions of the XPL. The first version, people didn't really like it because we kind of designed it to be a one-note wonder. You match it with your vehicle. It had a super lightweight cone,
Yeah.
a really strong motor,
Yeah.
but it wasn't very musical.
Okay.
It was made strictly for SPL, but people didn't understand that.
Yeah.
You know, so they tried to use it for music, and it didn't give them the results that they wanted.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then we changed to the XPLC series,
Okay.
and that was an awesome driver.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it sounded so good. Had a foam surround,
Uh-huh.
big motor, you know, decent amount of weight to the cone, but it wasn't a solo barrack. It still
Yeah.
needed a little bit bigger box than a solo barrack, but
Yeah.
it was a really good driver. And that's what the XPL was all about.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
much history.
Yeah, man.
Okay,
We've,
let's
we've
take-
made a lot of woofers over the years.
Yes. Let's take some questions from the audience. First up, wait, it's coming up. Here we go. Brian Park. Hello, Brian. Thanks for coming tonight. Is there an easy shortcut looking at, let's say, VAS, divide by 3, and bam, you have your internal volume? Is there an easy shortcut to figure out VAS?
Not necessarily, because it's not just about VAS. You know, there's other things that contribute to frequency response. I can tell you, though, as a rule of thumb when it comes to VAS, and this is just a rule of thumb, but once you hit 10 times the VAS, then you're in a free air application. So that's kind of the opposite of what you're asking. You were kind of, you know, how small of a box can I make based on the VAS? But the only thing I really know to correlate with VAS as far as that goes, our application goes, is once you hit 10 times the VAS, then you're in free air. Now, that's not always the case. It's just a rule of thumb. We were messing with a 4-inch speaker recently, and it was in about 4 times the VAS, but the box wasn't really doing anything as we increased box volume. So it was pretty much free air at that point. But we're talking a 4-inch driver with
Yeah.
not a lot of displacement that doesn't
Yeah.
play low, so I'm sure that weighed into the equation.
Sure, sure. Thank you for the question. Next up, SDK enclosures, $5. I'm sure there's a great joke there somewhere. Can we go over the difference of a high MMS driver versus a low MMS driver of the same SD?
Yeah, basically, the more mass you have, the lower it's going to play. So it's going to decrease your FS. You decrease the mass, it's going to increase your FS. That's pretty much it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, same way we tune passive radiators, for example.
Okay.
We add weight, they tune lower. We take away weight, they tune higher.
Sure, sure. Next question. Blake. Hello, Blake. Thanks for being here. How do you all handle non-linearities that won't show in the Teal Small specs, like progressive suspension designs?
Well, actually, we can see them in our TS specs because our Clipple is able to produce BL curves and that KMS curve that I was talking about. So we can see exactly what that progressive roll spider is doing.
What is a progressive roll spider?
It's where the rolls are not the same size. They progressively
Okay.
change in size. And I believe what the advantage is that it doesn't stiffen so much when it gets towards the end
Okay.
of its suspension.
So it's like a variable, well, I guess it'd be a variable.
It's a variable size roll.
Yeah,
Like if you
okay.
looked at a cross-section cutting on the outside, they're larger and they progressively get smaller towards the voice coil.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Good question, thank you. Another question. Brian Park again. Hey, Brian. If someone wants subsonic, does FS point you in a good direction?
Kind of. You know, like I said earlier, the lower the FS, typically the lower it plays. But again, FS is measured at small signal. And sometimes you don't get into a stiffer portion of the suspension until you move the speaker a little bit more. So that's why we can listen to speakers that have a lower FS that actually don't sound like they play as low.
Okay.
But
So-
the measurement shows that they play a little lower because it's done at small signal.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's not moving as much.
Yeah.
You move it more, you get into a stiffer portion of the suspension, now your FS raises.
So this would be part of the reason why sometimes a driver on paper looks great, but then when we're listening to it, like, oh, that's not exactly what we expected.
Yeah, sometimes, and typically if they look really great on paper, they're going to be pretty good. There may be a few things here and there that don't quite line up with what you think you see,
Yeah.
kind of like this FS situation.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, for the most part, if the specs look good, it's probably going to be a pretty good driver.
Okay. Next question. Conman 420. Also a joke in there somewhere. I got an L715 in a shaker box that's made to handle 35 hertz. I have not tuned my amp out yet, but it's an 1800 watt kicker amp. Anyone know if I should run more power?
No. Nope. The L715 doesn't need any more power than that. I believe we rate that at 1,000 watts, at least on the Q series. The L7S might have a slightly lower rating than that. But that's more than enough power.
Yeah, plenty.
Definitely more than enough power.
In fact, and jump in, if I'm running this setup, I would actually run the amplifier at 4 ohms myself.
Yeah, I mean, if it produces its maximum power at 2 ohms, it wouldn't be bad to run it at half. If you do run it to get the full power, then be careful.
Yeah.
Because you're running quite a bit more power than you need.
Use an AC meter, and on our website we have the voltage chart, and you can get the exact voltage at the impedance that you're running to make sure you got the right amplifier power.
Keep it clean and don't bottom it out, and you should be good to go.
That's right. That's right. One more question, then we'll jump into some more Teal Smalls. El Fuego! Haven't seen you in a while, El Fuego. They say good things come in small boxes. How big is the box for the sub on the table?
So this is probably about 0.3 something cubic feet, 0.35 maybe. And the reason that the speaker works in this small of a cabinet and plays low bass is because it's got a passive radiator on the back. So that's why this box can be so small and still play, good, tight, low bass.
That was one of the prototypes?
Yeah, this was actually a prototype of the QB8. It was built several years ago. It's just been kind of hanging around. I think Ernie had it in his car for a little while.
Yes.
But yeah, we contemplated doing 10s and 12s also.
Yeah.
But we scratched that idea because the whole advantage to this is that it's super compact.
Yes.
And once you start getting into especially a 12, then you're not so compact anymore.
Right.
You're still super compact for a 12.
Yeah.
But we thought an 8 was good.
Yeah.
And also to get that low bass and that much output out of an 8 is pretty impressive.
Yes.
So.
I still have one in my closet because I go through all these different subwoofers in a year, and I always keep the ones I really like in my closet.
Yeah.
Because someday I'll use it again, right?
Sure,
You
right.
never do, but maybe I will.
Yeah, I bought one. I haven't hooked it up yet, but I've got one new, and I'll never get rid of it.
Steve made you buy one? Oh my God. Sorry, Steve. I'm just kidding.
For a really good price.
Yeah, really good price. Actually, you probably know this, but so in Oklahoma City, Joel Irby, son of Steve Irby, he has a brewery called Stone Cloud, and they have QB8 subwoofers in the rafters inside the brew house.
Yep.
So they've got all these QB8s hooked up in the rafters, banging out some bass.
Yeah, and they've got the new tap room here in town.
Yes.
And they've got the TB10s up in the rafters there. So same technology, but just in a round speaker.
Yes, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
If you're ever in any of those cities, come check out Stone Cloud. It's a great place to hang. Okay, let's do one more question, and then we'll jump into some more Teal Smalls. Midnight Munchies. Is Kicker going to begin listing the actual displacement of each subwoofer? Even doing the math as a user installer, it is still an approximation.
Well, we can definitely consider that. I mean, if that's a good number that you guys want to see, we should be able to take the X-Max and the SD and come up with something for you.
Okay.
So we can note that, and we can, see about getting that added to our spec list.
And this is the guy to do it, too. He works closely with Jeremy Brown, and Jeremy is the keeper of specs.
Yep.
He takes the specs from R&D and he gives them to marketing and sales. And
yep, he's the liaison to make sure that all the proper information gets put in the manuals, on the cartons, and on the website and everywhere else.
So Jeremy, action item. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not his boss.
Well, we'll have to have this conversation, with the team, and then see if we can get that added.
All right, so we're down to BL. Everybody loves BL.
Yeah, BL. Okay, so BL is basically your force factor, your motor force. It is the magnetic flux density in and around the gap combined with the current carrying loops of wire, I've got notes here, in the magnetic field at any given time. So it definitely tells you how strong your motor is and how well it's going to do of driving the speaker.
Now, in the early 2000s, there was a bunch of Me Too woofer companies using monster motors and no throw. What was that about?
It looks cool, it looks big and beefy, and so there's some appeal there.
Yeah,
definitely, yeah.
So it was like buying a car with a beautiful paint job and great rims, and it got a little tiny motor in it.
Exactly.
Okay, so motor strength, that's an important one. Now, I always like to talk about the Solo X because it's just a fantastic driver. What kind of motor strength can we talk about the kind of motor strength?
Yeah, I don't have any specs on it, but it's high.
Yeah.
The BL is high on those drivers. Like our 12-inch Q Series L7, it's probably got a BL of somewhere between 18 and 21. I think the Solo X's, now don't quote me on this.
Yeah, this is preliminary.
But I think they're somewhere up around 35 on the BL. So
it's a lot.
Which isn't, for a big bass woofer, that's pretty standard.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, QMS.
Okay, QMS is the mechanical Q factor of the driver in a free air application. QES is the electrical Q factor of the driver in a free air application. And those two things combine to give you your total Q. So QMS and QES are basically how well is the driver damped. When you send that signal to the driver and that signal stops, how well does the driver stop? Mm-hmm. Because the better it does, the better damped it's going to be, and the better your transients is going to be.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what it is. It's how well damped it is. It's unlike one of these old vehicles that you see driving down the road. They hit a bump, the suspension dips, and then it just keeps going. That would be poor QES. And QMS, or poor total Q.
Yeah, right.
In a woofer, what would happen is you would have overhang on the notes. The notes would ring out. They wouldn't stop when they needed to. The bass wouldn't be as crisp and clean as you want it to be. And so that's what Q is all about.
So let's say hypothetically you wanted to build a really fantastic one-note system. You would want a poor damped subwoofer?
Not necessarily. I mean, you might still want it damped well, but there's other things that you can do to make it a one-note wonder, whether it's the application or just the woofer itself.
Okay.
But you can definitely manipulate the application to make a woofer a one-note wonder. Back in the day, people are using a lot of bandpass enclosures, fourth orders and sixth orders these days. But when we were first doing big SPL back in the day, we were using, all the woofers on one side, the big, huge port on the other. And that's what was giving us a ton of output back then.
Okay. You were talking about the car example. My sister's first car was a Dodge Colt. It had a 4-speed transmission, and then it had a half transmission step next to it. So it was an 8-speed, right? But the rear shock absorbers were done. So my buddy Sean and I would sit in the back going like this, and around corners you'd go, as the car hopped around corners.
Yeah.
Oh, Tanya, I hope you're not watching.
We've all either ridden in, seen, or driven a vehicle like that. Yeah, so.
It's awesome.
You don't want your speaker to do that.
No, bad.
And if your Q is good and dialed in, then it won't do that.
Oh, that brings up another point. You've got here in the notes 0.4 to 0.7.
Yeah, so this is just another rule of thumb. I'm glad you brought that up because I probably would have forgot that. So as a rule of thumb, if a speaker is at a Q, total Q, the QTS, of 0.4 or below, it's going to be best for a vented enclosure. If it's between 0.4 and 0.7, it's going to be best for a sealed enclosure. And if it's at 0.7 or above, it's going to be best in free air. Now again, that's just a rule of thumb because you can fall outside of these ranges and put it in the application not specified for that range and have really, really, really good results. So, and most of our woofers you can use in a sealed enclosure, in a ported enclosure, in a band pass, and a few even in free air. So yeah. So we try to kind of manufacture a do-all woofer, very versatile as far as the application you want to put it in.
This is a good point. So we make a KM marine subwoofer in 10s and 12s. We make a KM and a KM-F. F being free air. So they're identical except
a stiffer suspension and a higher FS. And a higher Q.
Okay.
All because of the first two things that I just said.
Right.
You know, and so you want it to have some control and some power handling in a free air application, so it needs to be stiffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you ever put a free air woofer in a sealed box,
Probably not going to do too well. It's going to be super peaky. If you want a bunch of mid bass, then hey, it'll work great.
that's not why you bought a 12, right?
That's right.
Okay, let's do another question from the audience. We got a lot of questions lined up here. Living Loud with Andy. Good morning, good evening, Andy. Hello. Is that because the subwoofer needs help from the rear wave below 0.4?
I don't know, Andy. You just got a little too technical for me. So, no, it has to do, I think, more with just the stiffness of the suspension and how that contributes to the total Q. Whether you need an air spring to control the driver or not, you know.
Yeah. Good question, Andy. Make them hard, man. We love the hard ones. Next question. SJC Audio Guy. How can you tell if a sub can be installed in an infinite baffle setup? What about KICKER Golds?
No, I wouldn't do the KICKER Golds in the infinite baffle setup. Our entry-level comp woofer we recommend for free air, and we also recommend the marine drivers for free air. But it's got to have a stiff enough suspension and a high FS. So what we do on our free air drivers is we stiffen the suspension so that it matches the sealed box driver's resonance in the application.
Okay.
So the sealed box driver might have, say, let's just say it has a 33 hertz resonance.
Okay.
What you want to do for a free air driver is, so when you put it in the box,
Right.
maybe it shifts up to about 65 hertz.
Okay.
I'm just throwing a number out
Sure,
there.
sure.
So what we do with the free air driver is make the resonance 65 without the enclosure.
Okay.
And then that way you get similar to performance to the sealed box enclosure, but in a free air application.
Yeah.
So
Good,
it's really
good.
just all about suspension stiffness. That's the difference between a free air and a sealed box enclosure.
Now,
Woofer.
when we do trainings, we talk a lot about free air and using a properly tuned subsonic filter. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, yeah, you don't have an air spring or any control. So kind of like it's actually worse in a ported enclosure when you get below the tuning frequency. But it is nice to have some extra control down there since you don't have an air spring to control the movement of the woofer.
Okay.
So that's what your subsonic filter's for.
Good. So KICKER Gold, no. Do not put them in free air.
Nope.
Next question, please. Hey, Andy, again. Question, is there a way to do Teal Small parameters, but on the Clipple with rated power to get more realistic results, rather than 1 watt, 1 meter nominal?
Yeah, so we actually do, so not for printed Teal Small parameters. We just go with the standard, the industry standard, which is small signal. But we do have LSI measurements that we'll do sometimes if we want to, dig deeper into the driver. And that runs it at larger signal and does tell us a little bit more about the driver. But the reason we stick with small signal is just that because that's the way it's been done. That's the way everybody does it to put their specs in print. And it just keeps the playing field nice and level. And you're not going to find a whole lot of deviation. Like, the example we used previously on FS, that it can be lower until you add large signal and it gets into a stiffer part of the suspension and maybe it gets higher.
Right.
There's only a few specs it's really going to have that effect on.
Okay.
As far as, running large signal to be totally accurate.
And you brought up a good point, level the playing field. So for a consumer who doesn't necessarily know a lot about this topic, if they're comparing genuine Teal Smalls from various manufacturers, it can help them decide what's the best driver for them.
Definitely. And again, there's not going to be a ton of deviation in that example. If the FS is 33 at small signal, maybe it'll jump up to 36, 37, 38 at large signal. So it's not going to be a huge difference typically. So it's still a really good way of letting you know what the speaker's capable of, and what it's going to do, and what you should be able to expect.
Next question, please. Phil Mobile Sounds. Hello, Phil. How do neodymium versus ferrite motors compare in BL?
Like in size, like it says in a 1-to-1. So if you're talking size, the Neo is going to be way stronger because a much smaller piece of Neo is just as strong as ferrite. I can't say, how much stronger. It depends on the grade. There's different grades of ferrite. There's different grades of Neo. So I don't know, though. That sounds interesting, something we could probably look into. I bet you there might be a chart or something online that tells you the difference between ferrite and neo.
Yeah.
If you dig a little bit. I think I might have to dig and check that out when I have some free time.
Illuma Pro?
Yeah.
Remember that brand?
I do.
Weren't they using those elliptical sort of neo motors?
I don't remember them doing it, man, but I do remember Illusion Audio doing it, where they had a neo motor above the cone.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that was some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, and Panasonic had some factory speakers like that too, back in probably the 90s.
Yeah.
Where the magnet was in front of the driver.
Right.
To make it shallow mount.
Exactly. I was going to say for OEM system, I'm sure they were doing that for depth.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Okay, next question. KG Tech, good evening. How do you decide RMS ratings?
So if we're just talking RMS power ratings, we actually have what's called the PM8, which is also a Clipple. It's part of the Clipple software. But what it does is it looks at the DC resistance and how much it increases over time when we run power to it. And what we'll do is we'll do bandwidth limited pink noise, I believe from 20 hertz to 80 hertz at our RMS power rating, and it's got to pass 100 hours of testing. So it's pretty brutal because one, it's bandwidth limited, pink noise.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of heat basically going to the driver. And if it passes our power rating for 100 hours, then we're good to go. So it's brutal. 100 hours is a lot. A lot of people only do 4 and 8 hour woofer tests.
Yeah.
But if we've got to pass 100 hours for us to be satisfied.
I like this topic because when we're talking about the new Solo X, it's 2,000 watts RMS for 100 hours. 100 hours of 2,000 watts. That is the real deal.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And what really helps with a lot of that is the forced air cooling that we're using.
Yes. Yeah, I think in one of the shows we put up a chart, the forced air cooling versus not, and the difference in heat is dramatic.
Yeah.
20+% difference.
Yeah, maybe even more than that on some models. I mean, we've seen significant improvements in thermal performance since we've been, squeezing this air by the voice coils.
I love it. It's just like blowing a pizza.
Yeah.
Trying to cool
man,
it off.
Totally. It really does a great job.
Next question, please. Phil, Mobile Sounds again. Does cutting EQ in the subsonic range on a parametric DSP do the same thing as a subsonic filter, or is there a specific curve that is applied?
Well, it can. I mean, a crossover or EQ is basically just kind of like a series of crossovers. So you can manipulate your EQ and you can put a lot of cut down in those subsonic regions to kind of work as a crossover, as a high pass crossover. So yeah, you can achieve the same thing. Just make sure it's efficient and make sure your woofer's not bottoming out.
Yeah. Now, so all of our bass amplifiers, mono amplifiers, have a subsonic filter. CX is all fixed at 25 hertz, 24 dB per octave. If Phil is using his idea in conjunction with our existing subsonic filter, is he going to run into some comb filtering or anything weird happening?
Probably not, man. Not at that low of a frequency. It wouldn't be noticeable, I don't think. It's just going to give a steeper roll-off.
Okay. All right, Phil, cut away. As we like to say, it's always better to cut than boost.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, one more question, then we'll get back to Aaron's list because we're not done with his list yet. Brian Park again. Brian, hello. How much does the TS change after break-in period? That's a great question.
That is a great question, and it does change quite a bit because the suspension relaxes. As far as what percentage, I don't know.
Sure.
But typical break-in period that's recommended is, play moderately for, I think we say 8 hours. Woofer's probably still not fully broken in at that point. It's just going to take a little bit of time to get all those tight suspension parts to relax.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, things typically get better and improve.
Yeah.
To what degree, what percentage, I'd say that's going to depend on the driver itself, how the balance of mass and suspension, and so I think every driver is going to be a little bit different as far as that goes.
Now, let's do a quick Mythbusters segment. So way back along the way somewhere, someone said, if you want to break in a subwoofer, just push it with your hands. Is that real? Does that work?
Sure.
Just
yeah.
mechanical
I mean,
movement,
you're relaxing. I mean, if you're stretching, if you're adding a little bit of stretch to those suspension parts, yeah, they're going to relax some.
So there you go.
You can even hear it, you know, if you push it kind of far, you can hear the spider kind of crunch a little bit as it's relaxing. So I don't really recommend that you do that, you know, just go ahead and do it with music. Most people are going to have their woofer broken in the course of a couple of weeks playing it normal. You know.
Okay. So do not massage your woofers. Myth busted.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you do, just be real careful. But yeah, I mean, if you put a little bit of force and you try to, you know, put a little bit of stretch on that suspension, it will break it in.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so let's go back to your Teal Small. So VAS, let's talk
That
VAS.
is the equivalent air volume of the driver's suspension. So it's the amount of air it takes in a sealed chamber, as we know that that's an air spring, you know, and it's got a suspension stiffness to it. Well, that's what, when it matches the suspension of the driver, that's your VAS.
Okay.
And earlier I mentioned that once you hit 10 times the VAS, you're basically in a free air application. Again, that's just a rule of thumb. You know, you might have situations where you're 6 times or 7 times the VAS and not seeing any difference in the frequency response as you increase the box volume. So you're pretty much at free air at that point.
So this is a good question that you bring up. In our subwoofer manuals, we talk about minimum sealed, maximum sealed, minimum ported, maximum ported. What's really going to be the difference between a minimum and maximum, let's say, sealed?
The difference between both of them is actually going to be the same. You're going to have harder hitting, peakier or more upper bass from your smaller chambers. From the bigger chambers, you're going to have lower, smoother bass. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so maximum rumble, go to the biggest one possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you want it to hit as low as possible, go with the biggest, lowest tune box that, you know, you can. If you're listening to, you know, hairband rock and you're all about the kick drum, smaller enclosure will work better for you.
Okay. So if you're looking for useful information below 40 hertz, go bigger, right?
That's right.
Okay. You heard it here first. All right, so next one, SPLO sensitivity.
Yeah, SPLO or sensitivity. This is just a measurement of the driver with a microphone placed 1 meter away and giving it 1 watt.
So about like this. There, 1 watt of power. How loud is it?
Yep.
I love talking about our new Street Series bullet tweeters. Holy cow, they're hot.
Oh, yeah, they are. That's why we give you resistors. Yes. You know, we doubt most guys are going to use those resistors.
Please
but,
do.
You know, for the guys that want it a little bit more tame, there's some resistors in there.
Yeah.
Knock them back a little bit because they are hot. But I think that's good because that gives, you know, the guy that wants them really screaming, he can have them screaming, and the guy that wants them to sound a little bit better and not be so hot and maybe blend with his stereo a little bit better, throw that resistor in line.
In our Bronco, it's got, of course, Street Series, the 7s, and the 1-inch tweeters. And wow, I know you guys haven't had a chance to hear it yet. Sorry, we have.
It's loud.
Oh my God,
it's insane.
Yeah, but when you got that much SPL in the sub bass, you got to have mids and highs to cut through it.
That's right. That's why all these big bass vehicles have, you know, 30,000 paper cone drivers and bullet tweeters in each door, you know.
Andrew, I don't know, did you saw the show a couple weeks ago? Andrew up in Canada, he's got a smart car, and he does a lot of marine work on our behalf. And so he opens the doors of his smart car, and he's got 6 8-inch coax marine speakers in each door. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very loud.
And it's balanced too, you know, it's nicely balanced. So
well, those marine speakers sound great.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Okay, we did sensitivity SD.
SD, that's just your effective piston area. I think people typically measure this to about 1/3 of the surround or half of the surround. But SD, interestingly enough, it's one of those specs that kind of changes as you drive the speaker also.
Yeah.
Because, you know, part of your surround is a piston too.
Sure.
And as you move that, you're basically changing your surface area as you're moving up and down. You know, so SD is kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
Not very much.
Minimally dynamic,
Minimal,
but it is.
Yeah, but it is as it moves. So that's just an interesting fact.
And square comes perfectly into play here.
Right.
The surface area.
Yeah, more surface area. Push more air, more output.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, gosh, I lost my train of thought. I was going round, then square, then, all right, keep moving. X-Max. Oh, we love
X-Max, what everybody loves, right? You know, how far does the speaker move? So there's lots of ways to derive an X-Max number, and there really is no industry standard. Some people use the winding width, so the voice coil length, minus the top plate thickness, then divide that by 2, and that's your linear travel. Back in the day, the X-Max rating was just however much of the voice coil stuck over the top of the top plate. And that was just really a rule of thumb too. But it was deemed that once you move the speaker that far, you're at 10% THD. Well, since then, the CTA standard for subwoofer frequencies has gone up to 20% THD, because you can't hear THD very well from low frequency information. You definitely can't hear 20% THD. So that's allowed us to give bigger numbers. So our engineer, he looked at all of that stuff, and what we do with our X-Max numbers is we basically just specify half of the winding width. The voice coil length is this much, we cut it in half, and that's going to be our linear travel.
And that's it.
And that puts us at about that CTA standard of 20%. And we're at about 82% roughly BL at that point. So, and a lot of people, that brings up another point.
Yeah,
a lot of people will specify, it's this much throw at 70% BL. Well, once you've lost 30% of your motor, you're moving the thing a lot further than once you've, lost only 20% of your motor, or 10%, or if you're at 100% BL. So it's really hard to get an idea of how far a woofer actually moves by X-Max, because there is no industry standard. And also, we can move it a little further than linear X-Max. And that's why a lot of companies will go ahead and specify X-Mech, which is mechanical. Basically, what's going to be your voice coil hitting the back plate? Is it going to be the spider hitting the top plate? What is the first? How far can it move before that first thing touches? And that's your X-mechanical.
X-mechanical. Okay.
Yeah, that's how far it can actually move.
I don't think we have an X-mechanical on our stuff.
We don't. I think we actually started to add X-mechanical with Solo X. Don't quote me on that. We might have just talked about it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because I know it's a lot. It is unbelievable.
It really is. Yeah. It's a ton.
A fun side note. So as I mentioned earlier, we buy a lot of competitive samples. We run them through our Clipple, and one of the funny things to watch is with a strobe light, you can see how linear or not linear some of the cones are moving, and some of the tall surrounds actually flop back and forth as they're moving in and out.
Yeah.
You can actually hear them like snap, 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 snap.
You can hear
flopping.
it, definitely.
Yeah, so it's, if you want to check that out, just grab yourself a strobe light and throw your woofer on.
Yeah, run a tone. You can watch the woofer breathe. You can see it. It gives you the illusion that it's moving really slow, and you can, look for weird anomalies in the suspension or whatever.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's just cool to look at too.
More questions. Oh my gosh, we got a lot of questions. Okay, we got just a few more questions time-wise. Let's take our next one. Brandon Smith, good evening, sir. Question about resonant frequency. How much of a drop-off in efficiency do you get when going 10 hertz below it? 10 hertz.
So like tuning a box 10 hertz below the resonant frequency, or?
So how much efficiency do you lose when you go 10 hertz below the resonant frequency?
Well, you're going to lose quite a bit of efficiency, because at that point you're playing nothing but really, really low bass. So, where you get a ton of your output from in that upper bass region and a lot of your snap from, that's going to go away.
Yeah.
Kind of like a really low QMS can do on a driver. You're going to have some wasted energy.
Okay. I hope we answered your question. Oh, yes. Okay, we did answer your question. Good. Thank you, Brandon. Sorry for the confusion. Next question, please. Ashy Larry, hello, good evening. Does the Teal Small change if you burn up the coil?
Yes, absolutely. if you can even measure it at all.
Yes. We have never burned a coil, have we, Aaron?
No.
Not tonight, anyway. No. Good question. Next question. Brian Park again. Brian, you are a keyboard warrior. Can you add starch or something else back on the spider to revive it?
To like stiffen it up? Yeah, no, not that I know of. You know, those spiders are treated with a resin at the factory. So yeah, I don't know of anything that can be added to a spider to bring it back to life. If you've got one that's, you know, sagging or oil canning on you, it's pretty much done to my level of experience.
Yeah, and we also want to make sure it's still fire retardant when you're adding stuff to it.
Yeah, that
yes.
true. That too, yeah.
You want to maintain fire retardancy, shall we say.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Next question. Firebird Dude 2.
That's who it is. Who's that? That's got to be one of our employees, right?
Is that Firebird Dude 2? Yes, that is Herkimer. Herkimer. Now, Herkimer, I can't spell Herkimer either. But yes, that is Herkimer back there. So how did you know that was Herkimer? I got to know the story. Yeah, maybe as an employee?
It's got to be.
Yeah? Or maybe someone's been to our store.
Maybe a rep.
Maybe a rep, yeah. Yeah, that is Herkimer back there. Herkimer is sporting a bucket hat, and he typically hangs out in the Kicker store in the Visitor Center Museum. But we just decided, you know what, he ought to check out the show. So yeah, that's him back there. Good question. Well done. Next question. Marcos G, does Kicker make an equalizer?
Yeah, don't we still have the KQ30 around?
I don't think so.
We don't?
I don't think so.
Did we finally discontinue it? I mean, I know it was around for a lot of years.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think we just ran out of them and didn't make any more.
That would make sense. Well, we used to. We don't anymore.
Yeah, and the Q-Class amplifiers, of course, had a fantastic EQ built in, but those are also no more. So
that's correct.
For today, no, we don't. I won't say never, but
never
today
say
we
never.
do not.
Yeah.
No, we don't. Next question. Phil again. Hey, man. Will we be getting Solo X demos at Slimology?
Yes.
Woohoo! Are you going to be there?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, go check out Aaron at Slimology. Have him sign your T-shirt for you too, right, Aaron?
Yeah. Well, hey, if you think I'm important enough for an autograph, I'll be happy to sign it for you.
Well, now I must say that if you've ever heard a Kicker power bar and you press the EQ button or you turn the power button, that's Aaron. You're hearing Aaron Surratt in your power bar. He did all the voiceover for it, so yeah, you should get his autograph.
Power on.
I want my phone ringer. Phone ringing.
Yep.
That's awesome. All right, next question. John K. Hello, John. Good evening. Would Kicker ever do a video on Clipple testing and/or pink noise 100-hour testing? That'd even be neat to have a short clip of the stuff in Unmasked.
Yep, we've actually done some Clipple videos. We've showed the Clipple and how we use it, and we've showed our listening room and how we take measurements and stuff with the Clipple in there. But yeah, I mean, we can definitely relive that stuff and put it back on another show. I don't see why not.
That's cool, actually.
It is interesting stuff.
To have you in the lab walking through the power testing and stuff like that, that could be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did. Yeah, we talked about it in the lab and also how we use it to take measurements in the listening room. Yeah.
Okay, we got time for 2 more questions. 2 more. Make them good. David Bryant. Hello, David. Good evening. How does the 9-inch square mid sound? How does the square mid sound? Can you cross over like 60 or 70 or lower? What do you think, Aaron?
No, there's not a ton of displacement with these drivers. I would keep them crossed over fairly high. They're made to play really, really loud, and if you want to play them loud without bottoming out, then you're going to want to go with a higher crossover point.
I think 80 is what we recommend.
I think 80 is what we recommend,
80.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, so do your high pass
80 or 100. In fact, it might even be listed in the manual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so definitely use your high pass on it, because like Aaron said, you don't want to overdrive it and try to get bass out of it. That's what your subwoofer's for. So, yeah, do not tempt fate. One more question. Stephen, good evening. Thank you for being here. When is the Solo X release date? I know COVID set a bunch of stuff back. Oh man, this is the question of the hour.
So aren't 12s moving now?
So without getting too far down the pipeline,
Right.
So the 12-inch will be released when it's ready, which is soonish.
Yeah, it should be really soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soonish.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to quick remind you, new product, 100% QC. So once they're received here in the building, the team is going to go through all of them and make sure they're perfect.
Not just a small percentage. Yeah.
That's right. So when they're shipped, they're perfect.
Yeah.
So thank you for the question. We'll take one more question just because that was a question that comes up a lot. One more question, please. Marcos G, are y'all hiring? Dude.
Not that I know of, but it never hurts to turn a resume in.
Absolutely. Yeah. As I've often said, sometimes there's no position until the right guy or girl comes walking through the door, and suddenly there's a position. So if you've got mad skills, absolutely send us a resume, because there is a shortage of talent in the world. I mean, you go to a restaurant, there's a shortage of people willing to work in a restaurant. There is a shortage of talent, so we're always looking for good people. So, Aaron, thank you very much for your time tonight, man.
Thank you guys for having me.
So much fun. I love sharing stage with Aaron. Aaron and Aaron, that kind of thing going on.
Likewise.
So we're going to run a quick commercial. Aaron is going to go home and enjoy his family, and we'll be right back. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, man.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Wasn't that fun? I love having a great guest on the show, and Aaron Surratt is a great guest. Dude is a wealth of knowledge, and I don't think I said this before, but he also has a great singing voice. So if you get a chance to hear Aaron sing, absolutely. So let's get into the tech support questions. Obviously, Jacob's not here tonight. Jacob's enjoying an evening at home with his girlfriend. Jacob, I hope you're watching the show, but you're probably not, so good evening. So let's do Jacob's tech support questions. First question is, my amplifier was going into protection mode as soon as I turned the key on in the car. I sent it in for repair, hopefully to KICKER. I think he probably means into KICKER repair. And it was sent back, no problem found, NPF. No problem found. My amp is still going to protection mode. Please help. So real quick about no problem found. I do a lot of tours here at KICKER, and we always go back to electronic repair, and we talk to the repair guys back there. And what's an interesting statistic is 70%, 7 out of 10 amplifiers sent to us for repair, there's nothing wrong with them. No problem found. Now, in a rare instance, it's no problem found because the customer that sent us the product didn't let us know that this problem only happens after 25 minutes or an hour of driving the car. So if the problem is time-based and we run a 5-minute or a 10-minute test, we're never going to see what happens in 25 or 60 minutes. So when you send something in for repair, give us as much detail as possible so we can help you. Now, no problem found, as I said, is very, very common. A couple of things to check is your voltage. You want to check the voltage at the amplifier. Good quality ground, make sure your ground is solid, make sure your fuses are solid, and make sure you've got a good turn-on signal. You'd be shocked how many times we see someone has got a turn-on signal that just isn't strong enough, or maybe it's running through a wire that's been spliced 7 times and there's just too much resistance. So check the basics first before you send the amplifier back to us again. Also, of course, you can call tech support and they can help walk you through some basic troubleshooting as well. Question 2. I put 2 Comp Q12s in a sealed box with a common chamber in the back of my car with a CXA 1801. I wired everything up myself. Good job, do-it-yourselfers, we love you. They sound all right, but I don't think there is much bass as there should be. Do I need a larger amp? Probably not. Real common mistake is in the wiring of subwoofers. Dual voice coils can be very confusing because each subwoofer's got 2 sets of coils, and you can wire them in series or you can wire them in parallel. And depending on how you do that can actually change the way the subwoofers respond to the amplifier signal and vice versa. Now, one common thing we see is out of phase. And the way to tell this is if you look at your subwoofers and they're moving opposing each other. If they're moving like this, they're essentially canceling each other and you're getting virtually no bass. So that's the first thing to check. Check the phasing, check the wiring. Kicker U, we have an application for your phone. You put in the drivers you have, you put in the voice coil configuration, you tell it what impedance you want, and it'll help you wire the subwoofers. So do that, and I bet you'll find your problem. You don't need more power, you got plenty of power. Question 3. Hello. I have installed 2 pairs of QSS 674. That's our QS series component system, 6.5 inch component, 6 3/4 inch component system in his vehicle. So there's 2 pairs of those. They're powered by 2 KX 404s. So he's actually got 2 of our KX 404s and they're bridged. So he's running 1 amplifier bridged to 1 set of components, the second amp bridged to the second set of components. Lots and lots of power. They sound awesome and get really loud, but I keep blowing them. I have gone through 2 sets, and your warranty department told me to reach out before I replace another set. Can anyone help? So you have possibly the rare scenario of too much power. Now, normally we talk about too much power is a good thing because in most instances, too much power is actually a good thing. More amp power than you need is always a good thing, as long as everything is set properly, your crossovers, your gains, bass boost, all that stuff is set properly. More power is better than less power. So I would check the gains. Now, you've got KX amplifiers. These are really easy to set gains. Go to kicker.com and go under the support tab, and you can pull down our test tones. You're going to want to use the test tones. There's 0 dB, -5, and -10 dB. For mids and highs, I typically recommend -5 dB, and that simply means it'll let them play a little bit louder, it'll let them play a little bit of distortion before you hit the actual limits of the system. And they'll be fine with that. So make sure you properly set your gains, and also make sure you properly set your crossover. When a speaker has a properly set high-pass filter, it dramatically increases the mechanical and thermal power handling of that driver. So check your crossover and check your gain setting. In addition, check your source unit, your radio, your media center. Make sure the bass boost is not on. Make sure there's no treble boost. Make sure the loudness isn't turned on. All of these controls will add more energy, more power to those speakers coming from the amplifier. And if any of those signals are clipped, you're overheating the voice coils and you're going to damage them fast. So check all of those things, and if you need help, give us a call, tech support, we're happy to do that for you. So there's your 3 questions of the day. Thank you very much, Jacob, for putting that together for me. Next up, we've got some picks. Fail picks are always fun, aren't they? Let's look at some fail picks. So let me open. Okay, we'll do we got a little video too. It's just really kind of funny. So let's look at this. Look at this battery battery here first. So if you look closely, we've got an excess power battery lying on top of the motor on its side. We are duct taping the power and ground terminals to the battery. And then if you look up here in the engine, the top where the hood closes, you've got a little cutout here. I'm not sure why they cut it out, but they took the piece they cut out and they put it over here on top of the factory battery. So this is some really interesting engineering. Not sure why they did it, but here's another angle of it so you can get a really nice view of how they use that duct tape to connect those to the battery terminals. So that's fantastic. Next, I want to show you this short video. There's no sound, so you just get to listen to me talk over it, but check this out. So this is, it looks like a JBL subwoofer, 1000-watt subwoofer, ported box, and the guy is spraying something, some sort of aerosol spray into the port. Not a good idea. Then he's lighting it. And kablooey. Let's watch that one more time. That's just so much fun to watch. So let's watch it one more time. So he's going to spray the aerosol into the port. And then his buddy is standing by, getting ready to play the bass note. Boom! That's just fun. Love that stuff. Okay, so those are the fails. Again, if it's you that we're showing doing the failures, we apologize. Please don't take it personally. We're just all having a good time here looking at these funny things. Sam's boat. So Sam Law is a kicker fanatic, and he's got this fantastic boat. He builds this system himself. So he buys our products, puts them on his boat, and he's going to be in Lake Havasu next, I think it's 2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks, Lake Havasu? I forget, but we'll find out for you. Next week, Lake Havasu next week, Arizona, fantastic event. It's called Desert Storm. Thank you. The event is called Desert Storm in Lake Havasu. And so check out this guy's boat. This is Sam's boat. Whoops, why is it? I have to do everyone individually? That's not fun. So this is Sam's boat, a Malibu boat. Of course, he's got some kicker love on the side. And here's his pickup, pulling it. Nice shot there. So look, he's got KMTC 9s, 3 pairs of KMTC 9s on this boat. Talk about bringing the noise, holy cow. And then down here in the shot, he's got the KRC 55, which is the remote control for the KMC 5, which is up here at the helm. So he's got swim deck remote control of his audio system. Here he's got it looks like KM 65s and a KMXL 65 here in the side of the boat. So plenty of sound coming in the side of this boat next to the cup holders. Here's his amp rack. A little hard to see this picture. I'll give you a close-up of the amplifiers. But stored away in here, he's got a wall of amplifiers. Unbelievable. Check out all these CX amplifiers. And he's got some KX amplifiers for good measure. And of course, he's got a great battery backup system to power all these amplifiers. So a lot of power going on inside this boat. Here's the amp rack before it's installed. You see he's got some great power and ground distribution here. Looks like a squirrel fan cooling system going on here. It's a good idea. I'm sure that he's pounding this thing for hours at a time. Here's the bow of the boat. You've got some more KMXL speakers up front here. Great sounding speaker. So thank you, Sam. Thank you for the love, the support, and we will see you next week in Lake Havasu at the Desert Storm event. So those are our pictures of the week. You know what? It's time. Oh, no, wait, events. Events, and then giveaway stuff. So let's do the events. So we've got quite a few events coming up. As we just said, we've got that event in Lake Havasu. If you're in the area, fantastic event. Also, this week, host John Myers is at Go Fast Mobile Expo in Springfield, and he is working the event there on our behalf. So he's going to be doing some training with our retail partners out there. That's happening. Of course, we've got Base Wars coming up Saturday, April 22nd. Base Wars in Fresno, California. And it's not yet too hot in Fresno, so go to Base Wars there. Dallas Half Mile, our flat track friends, going way too fast on big motorcycles and turning left really, really fast. That's April 22nd on Saturday as well. Super Cat Fest. This is River Dave's place. This is again in Lake Havasu. This is part of the Desert Storm event, so just more things to do in Lake Havasu. I've got some friends there. Hopefully you guys will get to enjoy that event. So lots of stuff coming up. Spring, the weather's nice, the bass is banging, so please get out there and enjoy your systems. Now let's do some giveaway stuff. What are we giving away tonight? So first place, we've changed up the prizes just a little bit. First place is a BF100. You know what? We need a BF100 here in the studio to show people what that is. I travel with one. It is my music companion. It fills a hotel room. It fills a ballroom. It's fantastic. It's a self-contained, about this size, a little bigger than this, audio system, BF100, and that is the first place winner. And along with that, of course, you get the Kicker Unmasked t-shirt and, of course, 2 koozies. Second place, you now get the EB400. That's the in-ear audio monitors. They are waterproof, sweatproof, good for swimming and other outdoor activities. Although I will say that Bluetooth underwater doesn't work so well, so you kind of have to be like me, doggy paddling on top of the water. So second place, ZB400s, you get the t-shirt and the koozies. And the third place, you get the limited edition Kicker 50th year anniversary tumbler. So third place, you get the tumbler, the t-shirt, and the 2 koozies. No, this will not fit in the koozie. You'll have to have another beverage for the koozie. So there's your prizes. Let's go with third place. Who is winning the tumbler tonight? Winner number 3, Farrell H, North Dakota. Farrell H, North Dakota. You're the winner of the 50th anniversary edition tumbler, the t-shirt, and the 2 koozies. And by the way, Farrell H, if you are a Kicker retailer, if you work for a Kicker store or maybe you own a Kicker store, my good friend Carlos Jimenez is going to be out there training you guys in your territory in about a month or so. He's going to be out there training. So if you get a chance to go to one of his trainings, please do it. He's an awesome trainer. Number 2, who's winner number 2? Second place tonight? Number 2, Tara H from Tennessee. Tara, woohoo! You're the second place winner. You get the EB400s, 2 koozies, and of course a t-shirt. Be sure to give us your t-shirt size. I forgot to mention that earlier. Give us your t-shirt size so we can send you the correct size t-shirt. And winner number 1, who's it going to be? Number 1, Corey D from Oregon. Corey D, you are number 1 winner. You get the, wait, I don't have it here. You get the BF100, which I don't have here in front of me. You also get, of course, a t-shirt and 2 koozies. So you are our 3 winners. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all for the great questions. It was so much fun to have Aaron here answering all of your hard questions. And Andy, watching with those really hard questions, man. Good question, really hard ones. We like those. Speaking of Andy, make sure you stay tuned for the after show. Andy is going to go live with Kicking It with Andy right after we're done here. Andy does have prizes and giveaway stuff. And of course, you want Living Loud with Andy on YouTube and Facebook. Join his group. He's a great moderator, a great dude, all around good man, good family man too. Love his wife, wonderful lady. And Andy, we need to talk about your fall plans, by the way. So why don't you text me or call me or something? Let's talk about that. Next Unmasked will be not next Tuesday, Tuesday, April 25th, 2 Tuesdays. Andy's on next Tuesday. We're back on in 2 Tuesdays, April 25th. I'm not sure what that show is yet, but we'll have a teaser for you. So stay tuned. Guys and girls, thanks for being here tonight. We always appreciate it. We had a lot of fun, and we'll see you in 2 Tuesdays. Good night.